Hello and welcome to Pixel Magic Tutorials. I am your host Geekman, and today we're going to learn how to create Smokey crystal text in Photoshop. Now, a couple of assumptions that I'm making right off the bat. Number one, I am using Photoshop CC 2017. If you're using an earlier version of Photoshop, some of the effects may not work as expected. Second, I am using Windows. So if you're using a Mac, when I say hit the Control key on the keyboard, that means hit the Command key. And when I say hit the Alt key on the keyboard, that means hit the Option key. So with that out of the way, let's begin by hitting Control N on the keyboard to bring up the new image dialog box. And let's rename this as Smokey Crystal Text, because that's what we're making. So our width is going to be 3,840 pixels. Our height is 2160. Our resolution is 150 pixels per inch. RGB color 8-bit. Background doesn't matter. We're going to change it. Our color profile is going to be Adobe RGB 1998, and our pixel aspect ratio is square pixels. Hit create. We're ready to begin. First thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that our foreground and background are the default black and white. So you hit D on the keyboard to make it black and white. Next thing that we want to do is we want to change our background. We want to unlock it and we want to rename it. So all you have to do is right here where it says background, double click, and it will bring up the new layer dialog box. And let's name this as gradient. Okay, and then that's all that we need to do. Hit OK, and you can see that it is now unlocked and named gradient. The next thing that we want to do is we want to zoom out slightly so that we can see more of the area outside of the canvas of our image. So the way that I'm going to do that is by using my scroll wheel on my mouse and scrolling backwards to zoom out. You can also zoom in the same way. So that's how I am doing it. You can also go down here to the lower right and you can type in whatever size you want, like 30%, and it will go down to 30%. You just want to make sure that you can see outside of your image so that you can then use the next you can follow the next step a little bit easier. So the next step is to get our gradient tool, which is G on the keyboard, or by clicking on the little G gradient tool over here on your toolbar. Now what you want up here is something that's called a dark spectrum, I believe it is. Yes, dark spectrum. And the way that you can get to that is you click on the little arrow in the options bar right here, and then click on the sprocket, go down here to spectrums, click on that, hit OK, and it will be the last spectrum you see. So make sure that you select it. Once it is selected, you want to make sure that it is linear. Mode is going to be normal. Opacity is 100%. Make sure reverse is checked. Dither and transparency are also both checked. Then what you want to do is go somewhere outside the upper left-hand corner, and you can do this as many times as you need in order to get it right. But go somewhere outside the upper left-hand corner, click, and then drag down to inside of the lower right-hand corner, somewhere right about here-ish. Okay, once you are done with that, just let go, and you now have a nice gradient that does not contain too much of the green or the yellow, because they're a little bit too bright for this effect to look very good. Now, if you're putting this text somewhere else and you're not doing it just for this background, that's fine too. Then you can ignore all of this until we get to the text. But for our purposes now, the background, I don't want it to be too bright, so that's why I did it outside there. So once you have that and you've got your gradient in, what we need to do is convert this layer, this gradient layer, into a smart object. So what we're going to do is right-click, convert to a smart object, then we're going to double-click on the gradient name, and we're going to rename this as background, because the gradient is now contained within the smart object. So if we double-click on this like so, you can see it opens up a brand new PSB called gradient, and we can then change this gradient to whatever we want. But we're not going to do anything there, so we can just close it. So now we're working on our background, and what we're going to do is we are going to add a couple of filters to this background, okay, from the filter gallery. So we're going to go up here to filter, filter gallery, and we are not going to use these two, so let's get rid of that. And we are going to first choose, well, both of the filters that we're going to need are going to be found under texture. So let's just open up texture there. And the first one that we want is right here, Texturizer. Okay, we're going to choose Texturizer, and what we want is we want sandstone, scaling of 200%, relief of 20, and we want the light to come from the top left. Don't invert, leave that unchecked. So these are the options that we want for Texturizer, and then we're going to add a new effect layer by clicking on the new effect layer icon at the bottom of the layers palette. And then what we want is patchwork. Okay, and for patchwork, we want the square size here to be 9. And we want the relief here to be 25. And that will give us this look for our background. And that's what we're looking for. So we're going to hit OK. And we now have that background here. Now let me zoom in a little bit. And you can zoom in all the way by hitting Control-1 on the keyboard to go to 100%, or hitting Control-0 to have it fill your screen. So right now it is filling my screen, whereas Control-1, which is 100%, shows me the image at 100%. So let's go back to just filling the screen, which is Control-0. And let's bring back my Move tool so you can see things a little bit easier, which is V on the keyboard. And now what we're going to do is we are going to change the look of the background because it is too bright. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 adjustment layers on top of our background. So we're going to go down here on the layers palette to the half moon, which is basically our fill or adjustment layer. So we're going to click on that and we're going to go to levels. Okay, we're going to add this levels adjustment layer. And what we're going to do is in this first box right here, which controls the black slider here, we are going to change that to 125. Which darkens everything. And that's all that we have to do. We just want it to be much, much darker. So we're done with our levels. Now what we want to do is give it kind of a vignette. And I like to use a specific method for creating my vignettes that allows me to make changes to them at any time should I need to. And the way that I do that is I add in a curves adjustment layer. So let's go down here to the half moon adjustment layers. And let's go to curves. Okay, and we now have a curves adjustment layer. And the way that I like to create my vignettes is this curve right here. I just grab the upper right-hand corner and drag it down to the first black line. Once I've done that, I go up here to where the mask for the layer is, click on that, and I'm going to change its feather. I'm going to change that to 175. And now whatever selections that I make, they will be feathered by 175 pixels. So I don't have to play around and guess with the actual Marquee tool. I can just create a straight Marquee with no feather, and the mask itself will then feather that selection. So let me show you that in practice instead of just talking about it in theory. So here we have our mask selected for the curves layer, and we're going to go up to our Marquee tool by hitting M on the keyboard or by selecting the Marquee tool here. Make sure it is rectangular, and then we're going to make it a new selection, feather of 0. Style is going to be normal, and we're going to draw a big rectangle here for our text to sit in, like so. Now, once you have your rectangle, you can go and move it. So I'm going to make it centered here and centered vertically and horizontally. So there it is. And then I am going to fill it with my background color, which is black right here. Okay, and the way that we do that is you hit Alt and Backspace. Control and Backspace. I'm sorry, Control and Backspace to fill it with black. It's switched from black and white to white and black for some reason. So it's Control and Backspace to fill with black. And as you can see, we now have a nice vignette. You can then hit Control D to deselect. And we are now ready to put our text on this image. So we're going to create a brand new layer here. You don't have to rename it or anything. It will take on the name of your text once you type it in. And then we're going to hit our T for text tool, like so. And the font that I am using is called Alba. I have a link in the description below where you can download this font for free. And this effect works best on fonts that have a rounded edge, I have found. You can use straight edge fonts like Arial or Helvetica or any other font like that. But I have found to my eye that it works best with rounded edged fonts like the one that I am using, Alba. So it is at 340 points, sharp, centered, and the color that you want to use is white. So you want to make sure that you use white for your color. Okay, once you have chosen your correct color and font, make sure it's white. Then what you want to do is write in the text. So I'm going to click and type in Pixel Magic as always. And as you can see, we now have our text. Now the kerning is always wrong on these things for whatever reason, like the X is very far apart from the E compared to the I. So we're going to fix all that by putting our cursor in between the letters we need to fix, then holding down Alt and using our left and right arrow keys on the keyboard to move the letters closer or further apart from each other. So I'm using the left button to move them closer, like so. And there we go. Once you have it the way that you want it to look, and it looks good to you, hit the check mark. You're ready to go. Go back to V on the keyboard or going to your Move tool up here so that you can select the text and then center it right about here-ish. Now, if you center it to the image itself vertically, the letters might be outside of your area of brightness. So what you want to do is make sure that you just make it look good to your eye, like so. There we go. So now what we're going to do is we are going to apply a layer style to this text layer. So we're going to go down here to our layer style, and we're going to start with our blending options. And up here under blending options, what you want is your fill opacity to be just 10%. Okay, like so. See how it ghosted away? We want it to be 10%. And then what we want is our bevel and emboss. And the style that we want for bevel and emboss is inner bevel. We want it to be smooth, depth of 120%, direction is up, size is 65, soften is 2. Now our angles, remember, we never really want to use global light. So uncheck that. Whew. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm taking a deep breath there. I was very excited. Then what we want is 135 degrees by 60 degrees. Our gloss contour is going to be this ring triple. Now, if you don't see ring triple and you don't see all of these contours, all you need to do is click on this little arrow next to the contour, then go here to the sprocket, and then go to contours, and then hit OK, because it's going to say replace current contours with the contours from contours. It's a tongue twister, but just hit OK, and then you'll see all of these extra contours, and you want this guy right here, which is called ring triple. Once you have selected that, you want to check anti-alias. Then you want linear dodge add for the highlight mode, and the color is a very, very, very off-white, which is F6, F6, F6. And then you want the opacity to be 100%. Shadow mode is linear burn, and it's going to be black, which is all zeros, and opacity of 25%. Then we want to go to contour, and you want their contour to be cone inverted, which is this guy right here. Anti-alias is checked. Range is going to be 100%. Next, you want to do 2 inner shadows. So go to inner shadow and then hit the plus, and you'll have 2 inner shadows. And the topmost inner shadow, you want it to be vivid light. The color is going to be a very, very light blue, which is EEF BFF. Okay. Then what we want is opacity of 50%. Angle is going to be, remember, uncheck use global light. And you want the angle to be 134 degrees. Distance is going to be 20 pixels. Choke is 3. Size is 18. Contour is going to be this guy, which is cone. Right? Yes, I am correct. Anti-alias is checked. Noise is 0. Then the second inner shadow here, you want the blend mode to be multiply. And the color is a deep gray, 414141. The opacity is going to be only 20%. Angle is going to be negative 45. Then we're going to do a distance of 8, choke of 1, size of 3. Contour is going to be linear. Anti-alias is checked. And noise is going to be 2%. Next, you want an inner glow. Our inner glow is going to be a blend mode of multiply. Our opacity is 100%. Noise is going to be 7. And the color that we're looking for here is going to be, again, an off-white, which is E1, E1, E1. All right. Then the technique that we're looking for is softer. We're going to make sure that it comes from the edge, not from the center. Choke is going to be 0. Size is going to be 32 pixels. The contour here is going to be cove shallow. Now, cove shallow is this guy right here. Cove shallow, and anti-alias is unchecked. We're going to make a range of 60%. Jitter is going to be 0%. Once you have all of those in, you're going to hit OK, and then we're going to turn this text layer. Okay, first let's minimize all the effects. We're going to turn this text layer, which kind of looks almost plasticky and barely there, very ghostly. We're going to turn that into a smart object so that we can do just a little bit more to this to make it look like Smokey crystal text. So you're going to right click on your text layer, you're going to convert it to a smart object, and that's going to change its look quite a bit. Okay, once you are done with that, we're going to add in a couple of filters from the filter gallery. So let's go up to filter, let's go to filter gallery, and let's get rid of what we have here because we don't need those. So let's get rid of those. And the first one that we're going to want is under Stylize, which is glowing edges. So let's select glowing edges. And what we want is an edge width of 14, an edge brightness of 6, and a smoothness of 8. Once you do that, you're going to go down here to a new effect layer. You're going to click on that. We have now a second layer up here. And on this second layer, topmost layer, you're going to want plastic wrap, and plastic wrap is found under artistic, and you want to go down here to plastic wrap. Select that, and the numbers that we want up here are going to be a highlight strength of 20, a detail down here of 15, and we want a smoothness over here of 14. Okay, and that will give us the look that we want, and we're going to hit OK. And as you can see, we now have a very cool looking smoky kind of effect. But we're going to do one more thing here, and that is on our Pixel Magic text layer here. And to make it a little bit easier, since it is no longer just Pixel Magic, it is actually the text, and Pixel Magic is contained within the smart layer, we're going to just name this as text to keep it straight in our head. So our text layer here, which is a smart object of the Pixel Magic font, the text that we wrote in, we are now going to add in a layer effect styles. Okay, and it'll be 3 layer effects that we're going to do here, which are basically just going to help it stand out from the background a little bit. So we're going to go down here to our layer style, and we're going to add in an outer glow. Okay, our outer glow is going to be a blend mode of color dodge. It's going to be an opacity of 20. Our noise is going to be 0. The color that we're using is a very off-white of EC, EC, EC. Okay, and then our technique is softer, spread is 0, size is going to be 25 pixels, contour is going to be linear, anti-alias is unchecked. We're going to make it a range of 50 and a jitter of 5. Next, we're going to need 2 drop shadows, so click on the little plus to get 2 drop shadows, and the topmost drop shadow, we're going to make it a blend mode of multiply. The color is going to be black, which is all zeros. Opacity is going to be 75%, angle is going to be 135 degrees. Remember to uncheck use global light. Distance is 16, spread is going to be 0, size is 10. Contour that we're using is this guy, which is oddly called log. And the anti-alias is going to be checked. Noise is going to be 0. Layer knocks out drop shadow is checked. And the last thing that we need to do to complete the effect is add in the second drop shadow. So the bottommost drop shadow is going to be a blend mode of multiply. The color is still black. Opacity is going to be 50%. Angle is 135. Make sure to uncheck use global light. Distance is 5. Spread is 0. Size is 25. Contour is going to be this guy right here, which is Sawtooth 1. Where are you, Sawtooth 1? Right there. Sawtooth 1. Anti-alias is unchecked. Noise is 0. Layer knocks out drop shadow. And we are now done with our smoky crystal text. Now, it looks pretty good as it is right now, but it's when you zoom into full size, and remember you do that by hitting Control 1, that it really does begin to look like smoky crystal text, especially when you look over here at the I or the C. Now, it looks very good with this particular font, of course. It's one of the reasons that I chose it, but it also looks good with just about any other rounded edged font because you get this nice smoky curve to it everywhere that there's a curve. When it's straight edges, it doesn't quite look as good, at least to me. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this is the thicker the font, the less it looks like crystal and the more it just kind of the effect stops working. And the thinner the font, the less smoky crystal you have, and the more of the outside kind of crystal-y look that you get. So you kind of lose that crystal effect. But it works with just about any font. So I hope that you enjoy using this effect with whatever text you need it for. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up, and subscribe. I do new tutorials every Tuesday. And once again, this is Geekman signing off for Pixel Magic Tutorials.